What about?
There's not a code case on that property anymore, is there?
Check
You
with,
helped
I don't know yet. Check with the
You
girls.
helped him, didn't you?
Help too.
The new owner?
Domino's what?
Okay, it's 6:32. We will call this meeting of the Lawndale City Council to order. I'm going to ask the city clerk to give us the roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Reed, Councilmember Osborne,
Here.
Councilmember Suarez,
Here.
Councilmember Kearney,
Here.
Mayor Poland Miles.
Here. Thank you. Seems like the volume won't go all the way down for some reason. I don't know what that's about. Okay, let's proceed. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We are now at the ceremonial portion of our meeting. We're going to have our flag salute by Councilman Osborne. I'm going to ask Pastor Mitch Maciel. Did he make it?
He's back there.
Is he here? Yes, Pastor. Thank you for joining us. You're going to lead us in a word of inspiration today. Please join us.
Please rise. Place your right hand across your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and good evening to everybody watching from home, wherever the cameras are. Greetings from Restoration Life Christian Church. Let's lift up tonight's proceedings. Father, we just thank you so much for all of our elected officials, God, all of our civil servants here who have dedicated themselves to overseeing all of the function of our fair city here, God. We just pray that you continue to endow them with wisdom and discernment and keen judgment, Lord God, as they oversee all of the proceedings and affairs, God. And I just thank you for everyone who keeps our city beautiful and all of our fire and police who keep it safe, Lord. And we just ask your hand of blessing in everything tonight in Jesus' name, amen. Amen. And amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor, for those words of inspiration. Okay, moving our agenda right along. We're going to have our lieutenant is going to give a public safety report.
Good evening, Mayor and Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm here tonight to present the Public Safety Report for February 20th through March 18th, 2018. Last Monday, March 12th, a neighborhood watch meeting was held at the Centinela Baptist Church. Several people from the community attended, allowing the opportunity for us to interact and exchange information. They had questions pertaining to police activity in the area, and they presented me with information of certain homes they had concerns with. The Neighborhood Watch program is just a formalized forum and ongoing effort of neighbors watching out for each other. Neighbors watching each other's houses and families and calling the sheriff's department if they see or perceive suspicious activity. Being part of a neighborhood watch group has many benefits. It helps you to meet your neighbors. It offers a chance to meet your local sheriffs and interact with them in a casual setting. It reduces the risk of being victimized and in turn reduces the physical, financial, and psychological impact of crime. Educates residents observing and reporting suspicious activities in the community. Addresses quality of life issues in the community. It gives the community a bigger voice, and it deters crimes. How to start a neighborhood watch: organize a planning committee, a few concerned residents that will assist in establishing the neighborhood watch. Select a coordinator and ask for block captain volunteers who are responsible for relaying information to members. Recruit members, including elderly, working parents, and young adults. And the city clerk, Ms. Rhonda Gorman, and I will be working together to assist those establishing new neighborhood watch programs if they have any questions. This concludes my report, and I would be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Is there any questions of the?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, Lieutenant, let me just ask you this real quick. Next meeting, you probably will come back with some figures or some sort of what's been going on lately with any type of criminal issues. I know you do like public safety tips and things of that nature, and we appreciate
I'll
that.
report on whatever you would like, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, let's have some of those next week if we can.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're going to move our agenda just slightly today. We do have a couple of attorneys we have to meet with, so we want to get that out of the way. We have a closed session. Item number 12 is a conference with labor negotiator, and I'm going to move that up for now, right after public safety report. And okay, we'll get to that. I'm going to move that up right after the public safety report, and then we'll come back for oral communications if it is no objections for the body. Okay, so right now we'll go under we'll go under closed session. We're going to ask the city attorney to get the provision for which we'll go under closed session under, and then we'll reconvene for oral communications. Mr. City Attorney.
The City Council will meet in closed session with one item to confer with its labor negotiator as agendized as item K12. Thank you.
Okay, we'll recess to closed session. I'm going to ask the Madam City Attorney to give us the report of the closed session.
The City Council met in closed session on item K. The council was updated. No reportable action. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Next item is oral communications. Oral communications is when you have the opportunity to speak to this body, being the Lawndale City Council, on items that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak to the Lawndale City Council on items that are not on the agenda, we ask that you line up by the flag. When it becomes your turn, if you can just approach the podium, if you would start with your name first. At about 2 minutes, the amber light will come on, and that'll give you the signal to start wrapping things up. Let's have our first speaker. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. My name is Jose Parr, and I'm here representing your Lawndale Library. Just want to give you a few updates of some of the programs that we have coming up this week. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. we have our All Abilities concert with Kerry Fenster. He specializes in music for kids with special needs, but everybody is welcome. It's a great event that's been going around in several of our other libraries, and it's had a great response. This coming Saturday at 11 a.m., we have an event for teens. It's vegetable and herb container garden, so they learn a little bit about gardening, and hopefully they'll feel encouraged and come and help us out on our garden on Fridays. And they get to take a small container with herbs and vegetables home to hopefully start their own garden at home. Next Tuesday, the 27th, we have our Reading Buddies training program. Our Reading Buddies is an opportunity for adults and teens to pair up with elementary school-age kids, encourage them to read through 15-minute sessions. It helps their reading skills and also gain confidence in reading out loud. And finally, on Thursday, March 29th at 5 p.m., we have How to Build a Story. It's a short story workshop for both adults and teens. It is taught by one of my old employees, so it's great to bring him back. He is now a published author. He just published his memoir, so now he's decided to come back and kind of help out the community. And that's all the updates I have for you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Am London 171st, Rotary Club and fireworks booth. I would like to let you know that my understanding about Parks and Rec not having a fireworks booth has been in part due to the loss of the location at Manhattan Beach Boulevard and Hawthorne. I don't think it was necessarily a vendor issue, but I do wonder if Parks and Rec could have been at Westwood Building Supply had Rotary not been granted a pardon again. So I hope that at least they'll start posting properly as they're required, since they can't seem to make meetings. And parkways. My parkway was not concrete. It was concrete pavers that had to be approved by the city in order for me to do the project. My thought was, and still is, that other residents should be able to do what I was able and granted permission to do through permits and whatnot, but do it in the same way and be held to the same standard that I was. Not given a $60 permit and told, oh, do whatever you want, it's okay. So I still believe that residents should have the right to do their parkway, but be held to the exact same standard that I was, meaning having to have a licensed and insured contractor as I had. And that contractor's license and insurance be checked with both state, local, and make sure that their insurance is in good standing, because that was all done to my contractor. I'm not complaining about that. I'm complaining and have continued to complain for a few years now that I was held to a standard and no one else had been, and no one else has been yet to this date. So all these parkways that I see, not one. One finally had to pay the same fees I had to pay, but it was after the fact as well. So what is that? Because I can tell you that anybody did the job, that doesn't mean they did. Just because they had to pay the same permit fees does not mean that they were held to the same standard, which is what I have always asked, is that standard I'm held to, everyone else have to abide by as well. And I don't think that that's me being unreasonable. I think that that is the way the system should work. What's good for one should be good for others, and no exception for this one and that one, because the friends and family, that needs to end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randall Abram. Last month, the City of Gardena announced its ban on safe and sane fireworks. To date, the city attorney confirms there have been no legal challenges. The reasons that the city banned fireworks were summarized by Gardena Councilman Tadi Tanaka's response to the nonprofit groups. It costs the taxpayers money to allow this, and the money you guys are making is a pittance compared to what TNT Fireworks and all the other companies are making off of you. You're like slaves to them. They're even making money. They're making money off you, and you're not getting hardly anything. As in Gardena, the fireworks companies are the ones making the big bucks in Lawndale. The 2017 sales documents indicate fireworks sales of $266,677. After deducting the cost of fireworks and other operating expenses, The total actual profits of all the groups combined was $98,000, or only 36% of the profits compared to what the fireworks manufacturers made. The actual amount spent from these funds really questions the legitimate benefits to the community. Based on required city forms, only $68,000 out of $98,000 was accounted for. A total of $32,840 was not spent by these groups, by 5 of these groups. That means that out of $270,000 in fireworks sales, only 25% is accounted for that allegedly benefit the youth groups in Lawndale. The City Council needs to review the disbursement and lack of disbursement of these funds. Five of the eight groups did not spend all their money. The Rotary Club, which was once again qualified and once again reinstated, had the biggest profit of $23,497, but only spent $11,955, with $11,541 remaining. This group went to some efforts to obtain a booth, but only spent half of their funds. As in the 2015 and 2016 expenditure reports, the disbursement of these funds is questionable at best. This year, the Wesleyan Church, an organization with close ties to a council member, spent $8,000 payable to the son of its pastor. This brings the total of the last 3 years to $24,000. Why would you pay an individual to provide services that any volunteer parent could provide for free? None of this even considers the cost for Lawndale to host the fireworks companies. What is the cost of law enforcement for the days leading up to and on the 4th of July? What is the cost for the city to license and monitor these groups and the follow-up on all the financial reports required? The city recently raised planning permit fees substantially. Were the fees also raised to cover city permit costs for a fireworks booth, or is still only $150? This activity endangers the city, and fees should be raised accordingly. In 2018, it is time to look at fundraisers that do not rip off their participants and that involve the youth who are supposed to benefit from these programs. Government comes at a cost, and these youths need to appreciate and learn that there's no free lunch in the benefits of the city.
Thank you.
Good evening. Chairman Joey. 154th Street and in Lawndale. I'm here right now as beautification. We want to thank everyone that came out on cleanup day. It wasn't a really good day, but thank goodness it didn't rain. And it was a little bit chilly, but not a bad wind. And we did collect a lot of trash, so that certainly helped our city be a little bit cleaner. And we thank all those that came out. We had about 75 or something like that, maybe more, to help us. And I'm wondering what's happening with Manhattan Beach Boulevard and Hawthorne. When are they going to start doing that, building the restaurant or whatever they're supposed to be doing there? Do you still have to get that lady out of the trailer court to before we can start that project? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, I'm Marge, I'm a Lawndale resident. Sometimes you guys get on my worst nerve. Pam speaks more eloquently than I do, but I've just found out about the city boulevard is what I call it, and you have to have grass in it. Well, sometimes it's better to have the crushed rock or concrete than the grass that's growing up there. Their yard could be mowed, and there's the weeds in the boulevard, and we have to look at those as we're walking around. I wish you'd reconsider this ordinance about having to have grass. Let people have a choice as long as it's properly done. That's my complaint. But I have a saying for you. It's not the years of your life, but the life in your years. Think about it. And I forgot, did everybody make their phone call to a friend they hadn't talked to that I told you to do last time? If you have, that's a very good thing.
Thank you. Okay, it seems like that's all public comments, so we're going to bring it up to the diocese for some comments from the council, if any. Let's go with Councilman
I
Kearney.
want to thank everybody that spoke tonight. Jose, thanks for the update for the library. I believe, maybe Ken can answer this, but firework booths 50-50, right? 50% goes out to community groups and organizations, and the club makes 50%, if I'm not mistaken. That's how it used to be. And maybe we can revisit the parkways issue, because I see a lot of nice parkways, but I see a lot of dingy ones too. And with that,
Regarding the proceeds, the first 25% must go to a youth group, and the second 25% can go either to a youth group or to a charitable organization in the city.
so they're entitled to keep 50%, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll pass it on to my colleague to the right.
Councilwoman Suarez.
Thank you to everyone who spoke. I think Pat covered a good amount of it, but also, are we allowed to give any updates on Manhattan Beach property, of what's happened so far?
Good evening, council members of the community. Yes, we're working forward in a fashion, expediting the process. We're working with the developer. We're also working on the closure of the mobile home park. That's in the all-in process right now, moving forward.
Okay.
More to follow, and I'll pass along to my colleague to the right.
Well,
Councilman Osborne.
I'll pass it on to Robert, because that was the question I was going to ask of Sean.
All
so
right.
Go ahead.
Okay, I want to thank the librarian for his updates and for those wonderful programs for our students. Also, Ms. London brought up the issue of the fireworks booths. And particularly, I want to ask this question as a follow-up. I know you said there was 25%. Someone else brought up the fireworks as well, but 25% can go to youth organizations. So do we check every year to, when do you have to expend that 25%? Is it within the calendar year, or how does that exactly work, so we can ensure that 25% is actually being spent in a timely fashion?
There are 2 reports submitted at the end of the year by the various fireworks organization. What we call Part A describes all the revenue and expenditures, and Part B says where the funds actually went to. That's where they break down who the recipients are.
And when do we?
One is
get those
due in
reports?
September, and the other is due in November.
November.
And additionally, we audit 2 fireworks firms per year. We randomly select 2, we audit 2 as well.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And on the parkway, yeah, I too would like to take a look at that parkway policy. Some people are under they believe that this is an ordinance, when I believe it was a policy, a guideline, and not an ordinance, which was presented to us as a guidelines. And I asked the question, if it's a guidelines, exactly what does that mean? I mean, I know what a guidelines mean, but what does it mean in terms of, okay, if it's a guideline, okay, but thanks for no thanks, I'm going to do something different than what is prescribed in the guidelines. I'm not really sure how much teeth a guideline actually have. Also, I would like to also, moving forward, when we have an issue such as this, to make sure that we have the ability to read the comments from the Planning Commission, because I know there were several comments from various planning commissions that, unless it just escaped me in all the reading, that I didn't read their individual comments that they had on this issue, and I want to make sure that their voices are heard, not just as a whole in terms of their actions that they take as a body, but also as individual commissioners. There's different expertise within the planning commission. It would be good to see exactly what their frame of reference or their thought patterns were individually as well as collectively. So just keep that in mind if we can. Like, for instance, some people, Miss London's, she brought up her project and making sure that everyone is treated to the same standards. Well, some people believe that they cannot, because of the policy, cannot put a project such as how Miss London's project, notwithstanding, the fees and all that kind of stuff. That's what they wasn't arguing at that point. They were arguing that the guidelines don't allow them to. I don't know if that means that the guidelines is not clear, but I was on my understanding that if they want to avail themselves of that type of expenditure, that they can. Another question I would have is, are you required to have grass in the parkway? As part of, I know once again, it's the guidelines, but pursuant to the guidelines, are you required to have grass? Or was there some alternatives notwithstanding grass? So some people believe that you have to have grass in that parkway.
There was a couple of options, Mr. Mayor. One of them was coarse grass, natural turf, or a ground cover. In the report, staff recommended against 100% hardscape because of the NPDES feature, the ability to capture runoff. So that's why we were recommending again against the hardscape, complete concrete or completely covered with any sort of hardscape like tiles as well.
But it doesn't have to be 100% grass.
100% grass or ground cover. And there was some examples provided for in the guidelines.
So it's grass or
ground covers.
Now, speaking of the 100% concrete, what about with grass in between the concrete, which will allow the water to percolate? I know when I mentioned that, the argument was that by having 100% of concrete, that it provides for runoffs and the storm drains and things of that nature. I think that's why we didn't want.
Correct.
But what about if you had strips of grass in between so the water can get?
There is latitude. I mean, there's a couple of options. One is you can have complete grass or 100% ground cover. The second design option is where you're giving a little bit more latitude, where it can be a combination of ground cover, stepping stones, but total of 75% landscape coverage. So there is a little bit of design latitude, and that's where somebody has to put together a plan and submit it to Public Works for review.
Okay. Because some people, including some commissioners, believe that you cannot have the concrete there with grass in between that allows the water to percolate. I'm not saying whether they was for it or against it, but they believe that the guidelines does not provide for such. And some people say that it does. Ms. Lundy is saying that it does not. Okay, so maybe we can get some clarification on that, because people are really confused with the guidelines. So maybe we can take a look at it and see if there's a way we can clarify it. So,
well, Mr. Mayor, as Frank pointed out, you're allowed up to 25% to be
grass.
No, the hardscape.
Hardscape.
Right. So you can have grass and concrete as long as only 25% is the non-pervious material.
So if you have concrete and you have the grass in between the concrete, then there's not, you won't meet that goal, because
it depends on how much concrete you have. It needs to be 25% or less.
Yeah. Huh.
And then it can be the stepping stones, the tiles, the concrete, whatever that's not live.
Okay. We'll try to clarify a little later. Let's put that on everybody's radar. I don't want to take a lot of time on it, but okay. I think I had one other issue. Ms. Doty, thank you for always volunteering on the cleanup day. You guys with the beautification committee do such a great job with that project every year, and we thank you for your time and your efforts. We talked about that. Okay, and with that, that's all I have on the public comments. So with that, we'll move our agenda.
I want to pull 3.
You want to pull it? Okay, so we're at the consent calendar, and there has been a request to pull 3. Okay, so we will, without any objections, pull 3 from the consent calendar.
No objections.
Okay, no objections. Okay. What's the pleasure of this body concerning the rest of the consent calendar, with the exception of item 3?
Well, if there's no more exceptions, I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
Not to. Okay.
To approve.
We know what you mean.
Approve, yeah.
Okay, so there's been a motion that we approve the consent calendar by Councilmember Reed, with the exception of item 3, and it was seconded by
me,
Councilmember Osborne.
That's all right. We know what we're talking about.
Okay, Councilmember Osborne. Are there any discussion on the consent calendar?
None.
Okay, will the council please vote for the consent calendar?
Motion approved unanimously with Mayor Pro Tem Reed absent.
Okay, thank you, Madam City Clerk. Okay, our next item is going to be item number 3 on the consent calendar. Councilmember Osborne.
Yeah, I just have a couple things to say and a couple questions. You know, I knew this was coming, this other traffic signal, from some time ago, and I'd like Frank or Steve or anyone to speak again, just to repeat, because my concern is that for 60 years, we never had a traffic signal there in that residential area. And now I've heard the reasons why, because of the traffic study, it's needed. However, it concerns me because it's, I believe, 100 yards or so or less maybe from another traffic signal. And if this just continues, I hate to say it, but it seems like we're going down a path, we're going to have traffic signals on every corner. And maybe that's, some people want that, or maybe that's a good thing in some people's eyes, but when it's so close to one, I'm questioning the absolute need in it, as opposed to other alternatives where we've seen in locations where there's press button flashing lights as an indicator or something of that sort. Regardless, if I vote for this and it does pass, I'd like to hear some assurances that it's at least timed to the eastern signal it's closest to there on Prairie, because I could see a really potential problem here where this could back up traffic in either direction, really, but particularly between the signals, because I've seen that occur in other areas where signals are not timed or they fall off timing, which does happen. They fall out of sync with each other, and you could have just more headaches than as a result of this installation. So if you would, Frank or Steve or somebody, explain the need and the assurances that will be made that the synchronization will be maintained and continue to be maintained. Okay?
Okay. To answer the number one need, we received several complaints with regards to the amount of volume, traffic volume, and also the volume of pedestrians. As you know, right now there is a flashing beacon, and it's programmed to be on during the peak hours. Those are the morning and in the afternoon hours when the kids are going back and forth to school, back and forth from school. So that was the concern, and so a traffic study was done. In the process, they found that there was severe site obstructions also with cross traffic, in addition to the noted high count of pedestrian traffic. So it met the warrants for a traffic signal. Unfortunately, that becomes now to our attention, and so that's why we're moving forward with the traffic signal.
Well, let me interject right there if I can. That being said, that's the concern that there was. In fact, I brought this issue up related to it. There was the Edison utility light blocking the view of one of those yellow signs there. And the hope was that the sign could be moved the other side of the utility pole so it could be more visible. And I hope that's not what started all this on this path, But that being said, what you mentioned a moment ago, there's other numerous locations throughout the city where there is a preponderance of pedestrians, whether legally crossing or so forth. I mean, there's a lot of jaywalking in this city. So that's my concern. I don't know if you can even make that kind of assurance that, probably won't be around then in 40 years, but will we come back to this world where it's traffic signals on every single signal? Maybe that's the goal, no more cars. I don't know.
I hope not.
Subterfuge. But you see what I'm saying? If somebody else brings up some other locations, are we going to have to keep going down the path of traffic signals at every corner? It sounds crazy, but maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's a series of warrants that must be met. I mean, and they're very strict. They're very strict to meet, and so it follows engineering, of course, the engineering guidelines dictated by the state. So, I mean, we're not.
Also, we blame the state.
Well,
okay
those are the
okay
guidelines issued by the state, by the METCD.
See, I can think back in time. I can just envision when Mayor Hoffman was here, him seeing this issue and saying, well, why can't those people crossing there just walk down a block and cross where the light and the crosswalk already is? Or to the west, there's another one right there at, it's Eastwood, or is it, no, it's Freeman. So you got the two right there. And even when I was young, there was no light there. So again, this has been going on, and it's going to continue to go on.
The question is because they won't.
Well, yeah,
But they
I know
will
that
not.
answer. And that's why I'm concerned about this going forward in the future. I could see this like a slippery slope. You're going to have signals everywhere. Anyway, maybe I'm just barking up the wrong tree, but it's going to be a world where you can't drive.
And the second point, we were aware of the proximity to the intersection there at Prairie, so they will be synchronized, and the traffic engineer has been, of course, advised, and they will coordinate with LA County Public Works, since they're the ones that synchronize
Their
our
yard is
signals.
right there.
Right.
Yeah. Would they be the responsible party to make corrections if there is a power outage or whatever?
Just to maintain and synchronize.
Good.
There's another item. No, actually, we are going to put a battery backup at that intersection.
As an added insurance
Yes.
for the synchronization or for the signal itself?
Yes, to the synchronization and also for the signal itself.
Well, that's good to hear. Okay. All right, like I said, I'm voting for it begrudgingly.
But we still have to wait for the county to sync.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
goes out of sync, right?
Yeah, exactly. We know what that happens. Every time there's a signal out, we have to wait for the county response to fix the signal. That sometimes takes not hours, but days.
Right.
I had a technical question regarding the synchronization. Can it be synchronized according to the peak hours during the school time? Because that's the main traffic of pedestrians that section gets.
Typically, traffic gets the priority. So, yes, the pedestrian push button will activate and place a demand on traffic. However, it's monitoring the traffic more than it is the pedestrian. So the traffic will take the precedence.
Okay. Okay, so what is the pleasure of this body concerning item number 3 on the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, if I may very quickly,
Yes, sir.
looking at the agreement, it does not include the amount for the contingency that's typically put in. The contract only includes the agreement only includes the contract amount of $27,932. So I would say we forego the contingency in this case since it's not included in the agreement.
That's fine.
That would have been $2,900 more.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay, so what is the pleasure of this body concerning item number 3?
Well, it seems like we have to, so I'll make
Yeah,
the motion.
Let my colleagues make the motion.
Since you brought it up.
I'll vote for it begrudgingly.
So you have a motion? You do a second? Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion has been made by Councilman Suarez and seconded by Councilman Pat Kearney to approve item number 3.
I said my piece.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, would the council please vote?
Accessory dwellings.
Motion approved unanimously with Mayor Pro Tem Reed absent.
Thank you.
I should have done like that.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is a public hearing. Public hearing item number 7, accessory dwelling unit ordinance. Let's start with the staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and members of the audience. Before you have the accessory dwelling unit amendments before you for consideration. This item's been before the council for our actual full ordinance. A couple years back, we had an interim ordinance, and then we brought forward a regular ordinance for consideration for ADU. As the council is well aware, there's a housing crisis throughout the state. The state of California, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, as well as the California legislature has been implementing housing measures. The ADU ordinance, is an ongoing process. Recently, since the adoption of the ADU ordinance, the legislature has passed Assembly Bill 494 and Senate Bill 229, which allowed a little bit, I think it was some pushback from cities and counties on the open carte blanche of the ADU ordinance that we had to pass. Staff's been on top of this. In fact, I took a little tour around Southern California on my day off, went and visited my colleagues around the state and asked them what they're doing. And I found out that we could actually start, with this new Assembly Bill and Senate Bill, we could start regulating and ratcheting down some of the regulations that we currently have adopted. Some of the regulations we recommended, these are clarifications. The ADU cannot be sold separately, clarifies there's only one ADU per lot, lot size requirements, maximum standards for detached ADUs. So before, they could be up to 1,200 square feet detached, what was going on in the department, we have about 15+ applications. Sometimes the ADU was bigger than the primary structure. As the council is well aware, most of the homes in Lawndale are post-World War II, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 750 square feet on average. In the city, the accessory dwelling units were becoming 1,200 square feet bigger than the primary units, thus becoming the primary unit and not subordinate unit. So staff addressed that issue. We had to add a section for efficiency units. It's under the building code. It's smaller. We have still our minimum 400, but this has to deal with efficiency. We had to clarify the standards. A lot of the folks that are from other areas are coming in, doing ADUs. They needed clarified standards, so we cobbled them together because they're in different sections of the code, and we updated them. One of the biggest issues, the biggest changes, the lot size minimum requirement. We raised the lot size. We did not have a lot size. Other agencies are adding lot size, and we added an 8,000 square foot minimum size lot size requirement, and that is consistent with state law. The project was found to be exempt. We noticed it. The commission had concerns with only one section of the ordinance, and that was the lot size. They unanimously did not want that included. Staff disagreed since the general plan clearly articulates, and it's a policy that we have parking problems in the city, that staff need to do whatever we can in the city to enforce those policies and ensure enough adequate parking. So that's why we came with the 8,000 square foot minimum lot size requirement. Now, we evaluated that size requirement. We looked at areas in the city where they'd be most compatible, with larger streets, less impacts of parking throughout the city, rather than the other areas in the city where they're really impacted with minimum parking. Now, on the R2 zoning, you're still allowed to have a second unit. You just have to have a garage. Under the current ADU ordinance and state law, you can't require a garage. That's why staff went and looked through the code and looked for areas where they'd be better suited and situated in the city. Because as I mentioned, they are allowed by right. They don't go back to another hearing body, planning commission or council for additional. They're permitted over the counter basically, and they go through a process and then we issue them a permit. The legal counsel reviewed the proposed staff's recommended ordinance as well as the planning commission. We did attach the planning commission's recommended, which they struck out. They wanted which is attachment B of the staff report. They struck out the 8,000 square foot minimum. Staff's recommending attachment A with the 8,000 square foot minimum included. This concludes staff's report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Now, what was the planning commission's objection to having the 8,000 feet?
Do you want the verbatim statements from the commission?
Prescribed in there? Or?
We have a parking problem in the city. Their comments were, we already have a parking problem in the city, so let's just allow the ADUs anyways. Those were the comments that we received. Those were the comments. Staff strenuously discussed the problems with parking in the city, and we need to regulate the parking and ensure there's adequate parking and that ADUs are adequately placed in locations where they're not impacting Lawndale residents. They can still have a second unit on most of the 85% of the city. Under an R2 designation, they're required to go before planning commission, they're required to have a 2-car garage. The ADU, we cannot require a 2-car garage. Therefore, they just come in as a matter of right with no parking.
Okay, so by having the minimum lot size requirement of 8,000 square feet, that is to further regulate, make sure there's adequate parking.
Make sure there's adequate infrastructure, parking areas, locations that are with larger lots. 8,000 square foot lots can accommodate ADU. They're not as impactful. They're in areas in the city where they don't have as lack as, of course, that's throughout the city. That's not just in one area. But where they're less impacted, they'd be allowed. Now, again, I just want to stress, they still get to have the second unit. They just have to go through the entitlement process, which would be the planning commission approval.
Oh, okay. I see.
Right, so they're not being denied the ADU. The ADU, they still are entitled to their R2. Just the ADU, the difference between an ADU and an R2 single family is they don't have to have a garage. And so they still are, as we tried to explain to the commission, they can still have a second unit. They just have to come to planning commission for approval and a process. The ADU is over the counter by state mandate.
Okay, I got it. Is there, before we open up the public hearing, is there any other points of clarity you may need from the staff?
I went to after the public hearing.
I just would say the same thing I've always said. The state and the legislature, they just keep passing these things endlessly with no thought to the negative consequences. You know, this is a city with huge parking problems, and they don't care. It just doesn't register with them because they want to feel good about, we're solving the housing problem, but we're creating a bigger nightmare for everybody in the city. Oh, we don't care. That's just the attitude they have. But I don't see it changing.
Yeah, we're gonna be like West LA.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, with that, no more further comments. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. It is now 7:44. I'll open the public hearing. I'm going to ask those who wish to testify in this manner if you will stand and be sworn in by the city attorney.
Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the city council this evening? Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, we will have public testimony. Let's have Ms. London.
Pam London, I was at the planning commission meeting, and I believe one of the concerns was if you restrict it to the 8,000 square foot lot, it's not a whole lot of those lot sizes in this city, and that was one of the square foot issues on lot size for planning commission. But they were also concerned with the state came up with this plan to add housing. It wasn't parking, no parking, whatever. And no matter what restriction you put on it, because the state says you cannot require parking, it's not gonna change anything one way or another. In the past, I've suggested the city look into ways to encourage some of these two-owner lots, these older properties, to find a way to make more parking on their properties. But also, you just have too many homes that have 6, 8 cars, and two-owner lots that have 12, 14 cars. So, I mean, there's always going to be a parking problem. I don't know that there will ever be an answer, but that also is why I have said, you know, you've got boats and motorhomes blocking the garages that, according to the city code, that's not allowed either. But nothing's changing there either, and that's why I've asked that city council make some changes there to try and help get some of the cars off the street. But as far as planning commission's ideas or their thought process, they just saw it as if we're trying to block the state's initiative by putting more restrictions on it. I have nothing to say about any of it because it's going to happen whether we like it or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Randall.
Randall Abram. Yes, my recollection is very similar to Ms. London's. The Planning Commission, I think, felt that the state was trying to increase the number of housing. There's a housing shortage, obviously. And this would also help Lawndale meet some of those requirements. So they felt that the intent of creating some type of limitation as far as the square footage would be a way to kind of get around some of the state's requirements. It wasn't that they were not concerned about parking, but they felt that the intent of the state was to create more housing. There's such a housing shortage that this would be a way to kind of go along with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we've taken testimony. We will, at 7:47, we'll close the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. We will now bring it up to the diocese for discussion with the council. Well, yes, sir. Mr. Pat Kearney.
I understand the planning commission and what they're thinking, but the 8,000 square feet lot size will help with parking. I disagree with the planning saying, well, parking's a problem, so it's gonna be a problem. So I'm good with 8,000 square feet
Yeah.
stipulation.
Yeah.
And
Yes, yes,
too
ma'am.
am okay with the staff recommendation, and as Councilmember Osborne said, we just keep getting the shoved down our throats, so.
Never ends. The state has done this dozens and dozens of times and will continue to.
And I'm okay with the staff recommendation because whether it's the 8,000 square feet over the counter or you go through the process of going through the planning commission, you still will be allowed to do the accessory dwelling if all things are met. And rather than have it just all of it over the counter. Just at least give us some type of regulations to have the 8,000 square feet. So I appreciate that being in the report. Yeah, we're not really excited about being forced to add. Of course, we want to make sure that we have adequate housing. Every community wants to have adequate housing, but at some point, you build out. I mean, you just don't get any more room unless you go up. You know, and who wants to go to turn things into to New York?
I watched a program on Japan last night, and it had the people living in it was like a closet turned sideways.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, that's where we're going.
Notwithstanding something drastic, at some point, you're built out, but, you know, the state does not look at it that way, and that's...
Nope. State
we are creations of the state, you know.
I just want to add one thing for the council's consideration. On these R2 lots, what we're getting to is a lot of regenification. When they find out that the rent, the median income of rent, and that divide curve between the supply, they always opt for the R2 because you can get higher rents or more costs when you add a garage. Because we hear a lot of complaints from people having to walk from Hawthorne back to their rental unit or to their house because they don't have a garage to park in. So the positive side of this is we're actually getting more new updated units too, and they're putting in 2-car garages tucked under the unit. So we are seeing that too.
All right. Is your endorsement a motion?
So what is the pleasure of this body concerning this item?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, so the motion's been made by Councilman Suarez.
I'll second it.
And it's been seconded by Mr. Pat Kearney. I'm gonna add, is there something the city attorney needs to read here?
The title.
Yeah, the title. Yes, Madam City Attorney.
This is ordinance number 1145-18, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lawndale, California, amending Chapter 17.48 residential zones of the Lawndale Municipal Code to make certain clarifying changes to the city's regulations regarding accessory dwelling units and a finding of exemption from CEQA. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the council, without any further discussion, would the council please vote on item 7?
Motion approved unanimously with Mayor Pro Tem Reed absent.
Thank you. Next item is item number 8, Proposition 69, Protection Transportation Funds. Let's have staff report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the League of California Cities is asking cities to support Prop 69, which will be on this June statewide ballot. It's also asking the City of Lawndale to add its name to the list of broad coalition of support that includes other cities, counties, businesses, etc. Prop 69 will consist of a constitutional amendment to ensure the fees generated through SB1, which is the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017, will be used for transportation improvement purposes only. As you know, Senate Bill 1 went into effect November 1st, and revenues are generated through an increase in both diesel and gas excise fees. This report also includes what the city can expect through the generation of those SB1 fees. At the end of 10 years, that'll be just over $9 million for road repair purposes. I tallied up what the city's current repair needs are, and those equate to about $8.3 million. So the SB1 funds would certainly be welcome, considering that the city doesn't have much or sufficient funds to address local street repairs. And that concludes my report, unless there's questions for staff.
That includes your report, unless there's questions from staff? Or
that concludes my report.
Okay, I'm just messing. Okay, is there any questions?
I do, but
I have a question as well.
I'll go first, and I'll be second.
Go first? Okay.
Mr. Osborne.
I'm very split on this because I can go with the spirit of Prop 69 here, because that's insurance, and that should have been in place initially. And I believe the history would prove that the state did not keep their promises on past gas tax collections. That's why they're doing this. So I did not support when the last gas tax was just passed. I thought it was exorbitant. if it was a third of that, maybe I could live with it. I thought that was just plain ridiculous, going 12 cents a gallon, plus the additional registration fees of, I don't know how many percent, 5 times more what it used to be or something. It's just crazy. So I see that's why they're doing this, is almost a strategic move to say, well, now we're going to make the promise to California that we're going to keep our word on these dollars. Okay, time will tell. So I'm okay with supporting 69. But if this comes as a vote and a motion, I am going to abstain on the support for going no on SB 1, because I think that's possibly going to pass. I think the voters of California are upset about that. So I'm simply going to abstain on that. If this comes up as a motion for vote, I would ask that it be a split vote on both items. Does that make sense?
The split vote on both items.
Well, in other words, I'm okay with supporting staff's recommendation for the position on Prop 69. I think that's perfectly valid, and if SB 1 proves that it's not successful, there is no repeal, that's great, because I know that benefits the city. As Frank just said, hey, that's great. But time will tell whether or not that occurs.
Right.
So I'm simply, my personal belief, and I'm just speaking for myself, the council can vote any way they choose on this, but I'm going to abstain on that. I will not vote to...
I mean, you're going to abstain on
because it's
8.
Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying? So this opposition, I will not oppose the repeal of SB 1.
Right. So you'll be abstaining on
Yes.
8 on this
If it's,
resolution.
Yes, but the motion is for a resolution of support of 69 and the opposition. So I'm going to
we can do both.
So if I may,
request them to be
there's two
separate.
parts. Support of
Exactly.
Prop 9, which is for future measures, but in terms of supporting the repeal of SB 1, you're not supporting that.
That's what I'm
It's 2
saying.
parts
So
made
you
into
could
one
break
resolution.
that down if you want.
That's what I'm saying, exactly.
Or
Because
make
I
a-
personally, I just think it was too much. I think it's,
And I concur
there's a
with
lot of
Council-
senior citizens, there's a lot of low-income people, and not just Lawndale, but throughout LA County, they're getting hurt by this. I mean, when they came to the pump after that huge increase, and it's still there, you know, it was just a few months ago, you go on the average, I think, pump in Lawndale was about $2.85. Now it's about $3.40 or so. And this all adds up. And I just think it's hurting a lot of people. And
If it's
so
the council's preference, we could revise the resolution to only be supporting Proposition 69.
because the
and
problem
not
with this is-
saying
well,
anything
that's-
about opposing.
Yeah.
up to my colleagues if that's
Yeah,
what
the
they
problem
want.
is asking you to do 2 things in one resolution.
Exactly.
It's usually a resolution, you want to
Exactly.
do only one thing
Exactly.
in a resolution to make it clean, and clear.
And I'll make a motion of support for
Well, let's
the
have
69 if that's...
first.
I concur with Councilman Osborne. I agree with him. I'm feeling the same way. I'm good with Prop 69, but SB 1, I think stinks.
You do too?
I too was opposed to SB 1 when it was passed. I think it kind of was just pulled over people. They didn't realize exactly what was going on. And so if we can just approve the support of 69, but just take out the repeal part, the opposition to it, I felt like that should be to a vote of the people, so.
Yeah, they decide. And they may go
Yeah.
either way, you don't know.
Yeah, and with SB 1, my opposition to SB 1 was the fact that it's in perpetuity, and I don't like any taxes in perpetuity. If it was a sunset involved in it, I mean, it would be more, to my liking, because then, in 20 years, 30 years, or whatever, you can rethink about it and decide if you want to move forward. But when you put together a sales tax of this magnitude and then there's no sunset date on it, I mean, I understand what their objective was, is to raise money so that we can do some infrastructure improvement, and I appreciate that. Allegedly, we're going to get $9 million if we ever see the $9 million from the state, and we have $8 million in repairs for which we could use that $9 million if we receive it, whenever we receive it. I mean, I appreciate that. I don't know how I'm going to be voting personally on SB 1. In itself, that's a different discussion. That's probably outside of the scope of this body. But given the fact that I don't like sunsets, might give you some indications. Even though we're kind of torn being policyholders, policy makers, that, yeah, we want the money in order to make some improvements, in our town. But at the same time, we want sound public policies and don't want these public policies to be imposed on our town and on our residents without at least due process from our residents, and for something like this to be just adopted, without, a lot of talk. I don't know if I can really continue, to stand with that. I do agree that we should, if we're going to do anything, I don't know if we even need to do anything, but if we're going to do anything, I do agree that we need to split this into two resolutions if it's our desire to express our support for Proposition 69. I mean, we don't even have to do that. I mean, in terms of resolution, but I'm okay with it if that's what we want to do.
I'll tell you what, I'll make a motion for approval of 69 and just to omit
You could
SB1. We'll just stay neutral on SB1.
You could amend the resolution to remove all references to the support of SB1 and just approve as amended if you wish.
Yeah, solely for 69.
That sounds good to me. So we're making, Councilman Osborne is going to make a motion that we approve resolution CC 1803 with the amendment to strike any references to SB1. Is there a second?
I'll second.
One second. Councilman Suarez will second the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? No. Okay. Would the council please vote?
Motion approved unanimously with Mayor Pro Tem Reed absent.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is item number 9, contract approval concerning the ballot measure consulting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As discussed in recent council meetings, future city budgets face serious challenges due to the upcoming annual sheriff's contract increases. Over the past few council meetings, the City Council has reviewed many alternatives which could reduce this future budget shortfall or future budget shortfalls. One of the items that the City Council has decided to move forward with is the community outreach effort to determine what levels of service are important to the community. At the City Council meeting of February 20th, the Council had the opportunity to hear the presentation by the Lou Edwards Group. Lou Edwards has direct experience with the City of Lawndale as they have assisted the city in multiple projects, including the Community Center project. Tonight, we seek to move forward with this project. There's no additional presentation, as we discussed it at length the last meeting. However, John Fairbank from FM3 is with us tonight and is able to take any spillover questions from last meeting's presentation.
Okay. Okay, that's if we have any questions.
That's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think we discussed it pretty in-depth last time.
It was a pretty robust conversation. Okay, so item number 9 is before us. Is there any discussion on item 9?
If there isn't, I'm good with approval of the recommendation. Because we went around and around on it already. So. We know what it is. It's to be preemptive so that if the county does a tax increase, we can secure that funding for our community as opposed to the county taking it directly.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Also consider, yeah, okay, we have that in there, okay. Okay, what is the pleasure of this body concerning item number 9?
I'll make a recommendation to the staff recommendation.
Already made a motion.
Did you already?
Yeah.
On the table? Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion's been made by Osborne to accept staff recommendation concerning item number 9, and it was been seconded by Mr. Pat Kearney. Is there any discussion on the motion?
None.
Nope. Okay, would the council please vote?
Motion approved unanimously with Mayor Pro Tem Reed absent.
Thank you. Okay, next item, city manager's report.
Yeah, just a couple of updates, what's going on. Just want to let the residents know that on Saturday, March 31st at 10 a.m. at William Green Park, we'll be having our annual Easter egg hunt for the children. It's always fun, and there'll be a large crowd there. Another item that's also happening on Saturday, March 31st is a Green Line extension tour. Metro has organized a tour for the Lawndale residents of their existing Gold Line. This is a tour that begins in the morning around 9, goes to most of the afternoon, so residents can go to the city's website. There's a link there that will allow you to RSVP, and you can take a tour and see what's going on up there. They'll answer questions. And related to that, the Metro is also organizing 3 meetings in the South Bay. One is in Lawndale on April 17th at the at Lusinger High School Auditorium. One is on April 19th in Redondo Beach at the Performing Arts Center, and then there's a 3rd meeting in Torrance at the Cultural Arts Center. All these meetings are from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and they'll be happening. That's also posted on our website, and these are all related to the future potential extension of the Green Line through the city of Lawndale. And we're preparing for the Youth Day Parade on April 28th. That's a month away. Yep, and also the Lawndalian, in kind of response to reducing the number of Lawndalian issues, we've moved the Lawndalian to the front page of the website and encouraging residents to utilize that for registration and so on, and just promoting that more prominently. And I just wanted to provide those this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Okay, items from council members. Let's go with Councilman Pat Kearney first.
Okay. Well, I did attend the Library Trust last Wednesday. I think Steve can give a heads up on the cost. It went down. It's lower than we anticipated. Well, in a second here, I attended the volunteer PTA at Lucille Smith School last Friday. I attended 2 of our seniors that passed away, Fran Ramsey and Ruth Tanner's celebration of life. And I think the city manager alluded on the crossing guard. We asked the school district to pay some of the fees on the crossing guard, and we got a straight no. And I want to wish everybody a happy Easter.
Thank you for that report. It's very, very positive.
Positive.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilman.
Hi.
Councilman Flores.
I attended our quarterly Centinela Youth Services meeting. Nothing major going on, but we're doing well with grants, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Osborne.
Well, other than the routine meetings of Vector, COG, and SCAG, I did go to over to Hermosa and watch their St. Patrick's Day parade because there was 2 of our Lawndale school groups. And I got to tell you, they were the best bands in that parade, Jane Addams and Rogers. I mean, you could hear them coming. So Lawndale was representing well over in Hermosa. That's all I got.
Very nice. Thank you. And let's see. So I attended at William Green Elementary School a presentation of African American achievement presentation by the 2nd grade students. Very well performing, where they highlighted some the achievement of African Americans to the United States, and a lot of these folks that they highlighted was a good portion of them was folks that you may not have, heard about. I mean, you hear about the Martin Luther King Jr.'s, which we appreciate, and those folks, but these are some folks that you're not quite familiar with. And each student had a presentation where they gave like a little narrative, if you will. And these are 2nd graders. I had to write them down. I don't know the names. He asked me what's the names. And the thing that's really struck me was how well these students read. I mean, and was able to present themselves in front of an audience of strangers and grown-ups. And so they really did a wonderful job. So I want to thank them for inviting me to that. I did also attend the Lawndale School District's Honorary Service Awards. That's always a good event. And I also attend Fran Ramsey Celebration of Life celebration, which was held at the community center. And that's all I have. So that's all from my report. Okay. With that, we do have one additional closed session that we will go into before we conclude tonight. And I'm going to ask the city attorney to give us a provision for which we will go under.
The City Council will meet in closed session on one item as agendized as item K11 to discuss a matter in which there is significant exposure in litigation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll stand in recess. That's about right.
Pretty close.
Okay, we have returned from closed session. I'm going to ask the city attorney to give the report of the closed session.
The city council met in closed session on one item of anticipated litigation. The council was updated, no reportable action. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Okay, it's adjournment time. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Lawndale City Council will be held at 6:30 p.m. Monday, April the 2nd, 2018, in the Lawndale City Hall chambers. It is now 8:26, and this meeting is adjourned.